So Greg, I mean, I'm not sure if I need to tell you this, but some of your shirts are kind of crappy. I mean, you know,
What do you mean by crappy? They got a sweet little pocket right here.
I mean they
That's
could be better. I mean, there's a place I know where it has lots of cool stuff. Uh,
yeah, but how cool?
we're talking about triple A cool. We're talking about shirts from 86.com. They're a pretty cool site. They sell all types of merchandise, including t-shirts, keychains, and other cool stuff that they sell on their site. And also have awesome video game material as well, such as Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, Guilty Gear, Skullgirls, Blaze Blue, Smite, and 86's own brand of t-shirts as well as other stuff. Recently they put out some new keychain for Street Fighter 5. So yeah, there's some awesome stuff there. So I'm just suggesting, next time you go out and buy a shirt of any kind, I suggest check out 86.com. And if you want to support us and them at the same time, please use this link in your web browser to check out 86.com. Put in www.86.com AFF equals 4. Again, www.86.com AFF equals 4. This link will tell them that we sent you and that we're cool with them as long as you're cool with us. Thank you and enjoy the show. So, Greg, hang on a minute, guys. You see me for a second here. There we go. We need some music in our lives. A little music, although it's not the one you guys are used to, but music nonetheless. Hello, everybody. This is Anthony Beyond from Mission Start Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Mission Start Podcast. Where we bring you the latest news in the game industry, as well as topics. So joining me as always, no other than the my Batman to my Robin, my Green Lantern to the Green Lantern Corps. I bring you Greg Dietz.
That's a very prestigious opener for me. Thank you. I want to address the listeners of the podcast. Last week, I was having a kind of bad week before the podcast, and I took it out on a lot of articles that we talked about. I took that on people that I'd never met. I took it on people in the chat. I do feel bad about that. It was nobody had talked to me about it, just to clarify. It's just something I noticed about myself because I'm a very self-conscious person to the extent that if nothing's wrong, I think something is wrong. There's a problem there, but that's for a psychiatrist to figure out. Anywho, I want to apologize to you guys for seeming loud. That being said, I might sound that way again at the end of this podcast, but hopefully not. Hopefully I can actually cohesively come up with a thought instead of yelling at Anthony about Tekken 7. Because I did notice I did that. I was like oh, almost seems like I was right. Like I always did that. Like it was bad. I've always been a purveyor of listening back on other streams and podcasts and try to improve myself. And I stopped doing that for a long time because I thought, I'm at a good place, but it seems like I'm going to have to start doing that again. So, that being said, let's get to the first topic.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that point, like all things, we're not good at them at first, and it just takes practice and time to get better at them. So, good on you. To be honest, I haven't really listened to anything I talked to in the past. So, yeah, just free balling it.
People have always come to me and they're like, "You've been doing podcasts for years now," and I was like, "A solid almost 9." And they're like, "How? What advice can you give me?" And I said, "Just start doing it, start talking, and then when you're done, go back and listen to it. Start making conscious efforts to improve your speech, improve what you say, and how you carry yourself." That's the best advice I can give anybody when it comes to a podcast. I mean, even some of the most popular podcasts that are still going to this day, exclusively my brother and me. I listened to Justin and Griffin talk about their progression with doing that podcast, and you go back and listen to the first 10 episodes, and their audio is really bad. And that was because they were using really bad equipment, kind of like I'm doing now with the Kinect and the headset and Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could use my laptop and be what looks like a Sega Saturn video.
Right.
It's just about seeing what you want to what you want to improve and working on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I need to get back into doing.
Yeah. One of these days we might just do an entire episode of like, how to podcast and like, just kind of tips and tricks of the trade, since we've been doing it for quite a while. Quite a
few years. I mean, if we do 166, I'll do the math right now on my phone since we're sitting here. Nope, that's the clock, Greg. 166 divided by 52. Nope, that's 25. 52 equals 3 and 3.1. I'm gonna add another 5 months to that. So say 3.5 years. Simply because there's been a lot of times we've taken multiple weeks off. So
yeah, that's the other thing too. that tends to happen every once in a while. But yeah, I'm actually down for that idea. So maybe in the future we'll do an entire podcast about podcasting and our experiences and whatnot.
I'm down with that.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, let you guys know there really isn't much in the past week of news, but I scrounged up something to talk about. First,
it's been a very quiet week.
Yeah. What's funny is like last week we had an actual like a crap ton of news, and this week's like none, just like completely just empty. So
that happens from time to time. There's been episode like we were getting to episode 100 and we were like, "There's nothing happening this week. How are we gonna do an episode 100 with nothing happening?"
Talk about something, anything. But yeah, here's what we got here for the past week in news. Going on with the first topic of the day. This comes from GameSpot.com, written by Alex Newhouse. Destiny 2 PC beta restricts certain game capture and voice chat apps, and this affects me specifically as well. When a PC beta for Destiny 2 comes out, Destiny 2 PC beta is coming up soon, and as with any big PC title, there'll likely be a lot of people streaming it out. Unfortunately for streamers and people who use voice chat, Bungie announced today that it's blocking certain features of common game capture and communications apps. On its website today, Bungie explained that in order to prevent cheating, it is resisting any attempt by apps to insert code into the game client. Many capture apps tweak game clients slightly with running to push notifications, capture a game directly, or other such functions. This most notable app effects by these restrictions are capture programs like OBS and XSplit. They are the most popular programs used by streamers, but they won't be able to fully function with Destiny 2 is running, as the game capture mode in these apps will be blocked. To capture it, you have to go full screen. Bungie states that you have to either use an external capture device or a hardware manufacturer app like an NVIDIA Shadowplay or AMD Relive. And I'll post a whole article in the chat for those who want to check it out. But basically it's saying that when it goes live at the end of the month, basically me and other people who want to stream it, we have to do it by other means. What it was stated in the article is that if you are running OBS, like right now, you can do by window capture, and you can do it that way as well if you're going off your PC. So it's slightly annoying. It's a little weird for the reasoning, the fact that they're doing this to prevent cheating in a MMO-ish type of game. Like, the only other reason I can think of as far as, like, preventing cheating is during the PvP, the multiplayer sessions. But even then, like, that's a little harder to do. Like, you have to go through a lot of steps in order to set up another screen if you're following a streamer and looking for him to gun down. So, it's a little weird.
Yeah. It's also weird because, like, I'll 100% back the naysayers on this one, because Bungie, guys, come on. Other companies do this, and there's no cheating. They prevent cheating but still allow this to happen. What are y'all doing?
Yeah.
What are y'all doing?
It's weird.
People smarter than I have pointed out that when you code a game or code something like this into a game, that yes, having that particular area of code or whatever can absolutely be used to cheat. That being said, it's not such a problem that they would have to put restrictions like this on. So I see it also as a load of BS. Like, it's unnecessary, it's restrictive to a lesser degree, and it's going to split the fan base in a way that it shouldn't be split.
Yeah, and the weird thing about this is like, I mean, because when the console version came out last month, they had no restrictions on that, and people were able to stream that freely off the console itself or through a capture device.
Well, I think there's two caveats as to why on that. When you're streaming from a system, it's the capture device will have the restrictions, not the program. So there's no code I'm putting into the game that's off the console from whatever streaming program I'm using. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, to kind of correct on that, there are some games that actually prevent you from streaming on the PS4. I'm not sure about the Xbox One.
So in that regard, so yes, there are a few games because I've experienced it, but that's when I stream directly from the PS4 or the Xbox One. If I'm streaming. If I'm capturing to a PC from the system, like I'll give you an example. Xenoverse 2, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. There was a story point about a solid hour into the game. All of a sudden, my stream cut off, and I could not start the stream back up. And I was like, I'm gonna test a different game. I tested like 3 different games, no problems.
Yeah.
And so that's when I discovered, it's their restriction, but. I then talked to people who streamed the game from console to their PC, had no problem streaming past that point. So that's what I'm kind of getting at, is that's why they were able to stream past that point, or they were able to stream with no problems on, like captured onto a PC in that regard.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird reason to give to prevent people from streaming it.
It's not.
I mean, not entirely. I mean, just to correct that, not to stop you from streaming it, but just making it just slightly more of annoying to do so.
Because when they say cheat, they're not talking about like stream snipers. They don't care about that. What they're talking about is people using the code to change, or using that area of code to change the game, to like mod or affect the game.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I looked into this because I was like, because my eyebrow kind of raised when Total Biscuit was cussing out Bungie for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked into it a little bit further, and they're concerned about people changing the game itself by getting in through that particular area of code in which a streaming capture device would use.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Gotcha. Showing off the little, the nitty gritty of the game code, if you will. Okay, that's understandable.
They feel like it's an exploit people will use, and I like to say that if that's your concern, then you built the PC version poorly. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, not to kind of point at Bungie's like, well, look what happened in Halo 2 with the whole rocket jumping glitch that people were doing. But like, it's Bungie's prerogative to do that. I mean, like, it's their game. They can do whatever they want. As far as this is concerning, like, again, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it is a minor annoyance. The reason for it is weird.
It is.
But it's not gonna stop people from streaming. Like, it's not gonna stop me from streaming it. So I gotta.
Right,
go ahead.
I mean, literally, like somebody had pointed out that if you're window capturing, but you want it as big as it can get on your screen without going full screen, that's absolutely a possibility, and still capture it.
Yeah.
It just sucks that you now have to kind of have it in windowed mode in order to stream it.
Yeah. So I will definitely be tackling that obstacle when it happens. By then, I should have my second PC set up. I'm setting up. I haven't done it yet. I have some right in front of me, but I literally am setting up a 2 PC setup for the stream, for future streams on this Twitch channel. So, yeah, either way, you're getting that 60 frames per second, slick, high, tense, high quality streams on here very, very soon. So, that's not gonna stop us. Moving on to the next topic at hand. We talked a little bit about Street Fighter at EVO this past year. I watched it. Greg watched it a little bit, and one of the things that I think is noted every year whenever EVO happens is like just how big the viewership is, like how many people are watching at the same time. We got some numbers actually. This was from the Capcom Pro Tour website. This is written by a Capcom admin. Oh, no, it's right here. Michael Martin. So, nearly 5 million viewers tuned in to watch the all-time great Street Fighter V final at Evolution Championship Series 2017. The finals aired on ESPN2 for the second year in a row, and Disney XD for the first time, garnering an estimated total viewership of 3.1 million. Twitch total unique viewership of 1.65 million brings the overall number to 4.75 million. The largest ever for the FGC event. EVO's 2017's top 8 featured. Oh, this just kind of goes into. Okay, yeah, it just goes into more about the tournament and whatnot. I'll put the link in the chat for those who want to check it out. No surprise, it did well. It did well when it came to viewership. It was on literally 3 platforms. It was on Twitch, ESPN2, and Disney XD.
It's definitely splitting the viewership, but as a whole, I'd like to know, like, all combined, how well did they do?
Yeah, I think there was some. I remember I didn't bring it up. But I know there was a certain amount of views as far as like how much in total. But it was so. When I was watching the event live at a friend's place, me and a bunch of people were having a viewing party. We initially watched it on Disney XD for a little bit before we switched to ESPN2. It was a slightly different type of cast when it was shown, because the way it was shown on TV was like it was the game screen. It was not full screen. And then like it was like a border around it, but then every once in a while they get like the players' camps like right in there as well, like on both sides, which to me I didn't like. But it was whatever. That was how they present it on TV, and every so often they'll take the cams out and they'll resume or they'd showcase more of the gameplay. Yeah, no, it was. I was gonna say it was. I'm not surprised with the numbers. I think that every year, I think EVO in general, like the viewership goes up every year. Not only on Twitch, but like especially for ESPN. And what has been generated so far? Because I'm not the only person who said this, but like I think that a lot of people who like fighting games, or if there was any game you could put on ESPN that is very simple that people will understand, it would be fighting games. Because like if you have no idea how Street Fighter works, you literally have 2 guys or 2 people fighting each other, and you get the health bar at the very top. One's going down, one stays, and so on and so on. So it's an easier way to process that.
Yeah, I think like other shooters or MOBAs would be a lot more difficult to kind of explain to a casual audience. But in that same argument, so are a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Like a lot of stuff that ESPN already shows is very much in that vein of like a bit complex and harder to explain. Like sure, you can be like football. That team wants the ball to go into that goal, and the other team wants the ball to go into that goal, and they have to carry it over there by throwing it to each other or just running it. Okay?
Yeah.
Soccer.
Yes.
Same thing. That team wants to go in that goal, that team wants to go in that goal. They're going to kick it around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right. Hockey, same concept. Basketball, same concept. However, there's a lot of small things about it. Sure, you could say, hey, that team wants to destroy that team's crystal on the other side of the field. Hey, that team wants to capture that point and then move the payload that way. Okay, cool. But there's so much more complexity to it, whereas a fighting game is like, that dude wants to beat that dude, go. And that's it. Like, you don't have to explain that much more. Sure, you could dive deeper into it, but you don't have to.
Right,
Like,
right.
You
Definitely.
can still enjoy every single fighting game without knowing so much and just understand one aspect or
Right.
two aspects, and it's like super simple.
Yeah, and an example of this happening. So this past week, or this upcoming week, I should say, the international, the Dota 2 tournament's happening this week, and I believe that the Dota 2 finals will also be aired on ESPN2, which is a RTS type of game, MOBA type of game. So again, it's gonna, people who may watch it, may love it, and like the average viewer may not know what the hell is going on just by looking at the screen and how daunting, like there's so many things happening right now at the same time. Yeah, like I wholly believe that fighting games are much easier to understand, and that's why they're better for esports on TV at least.
Yeah.
But yeah.
By the way, I realized you said the number of the total views on every platform, and I didn't pick that up.
Oh.
So I was
Yeah.
like, I want to know what they're all combined. I opened up the page, it was like nearly 5 million. I'm like, well, maybe I should have paid attention.
Man, Greg, you haven't been paying attention to me this entire time.
You know why I wasn't paying attention? Because I had to look up something on my phone real quick, and I was just kind of doing that and not concentrating on the words you were saying. So.
Man.
My bad.
You know what, Greg? You need God damn it.
You gotta turn me up.
Yeah, apparently I do. Give me 1 second. I will fix that real quickly. Where's my?
Yeah, that's all on Anthony's end.
Yeah, that's my bad. All right, there you go. He's high now.
I should sound better. Hopefully.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe.
No, that's fine. I got it. He's high. He is high as a kite. All right, so next on our list, give me a second as I'm trying to find my.
Wow, we're going right into it, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely. Not a lot.
Yeah.
All right, so going into our next topic at hand. Let me get this set up real quick. Let me see. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Greg's Overwatch Minute. Happening now.
Okay, so there was a big announcement this week. There was a not only a big announcement, but there was also a. Is the music louder than me? Are we good? Because I can hear it.
I mean, I can turn it down lower if you want.
No, I mean, I don't know how, but it doesn't matter. If it's fine, it's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a big announcement that the summer games are going to be coming back this upcoming week, on the 8th. And I should probably turn that down so that way. Yep. Nope. That's fine, Lucio.
He's excited. He's excited,
yeah,
man.
He's real excited. So, getting distracted over here. Lucio Ball is coming back on the 8th. That is going to be the Summer Games event. And not just that, but there's slight changes to Lucio Ball. So if you remembered a year ago during the Summer Games for the Summer Olympics, there was that's when Lucio Ball was originally around. And the way that you would play it is that it was 3-on-3, and you would try to score more goals than the other team. Lucio's bump could bump players and the ball, and he would get that back like that, and his ultimate ability would then draw the ball towards him. What this caused was a lot of people standing in the goal, bumping the goalie away, doing their ultimate, and scoring a goal. Well, apparently the developer saw that as a problem. So now, Lucio cannot bump other Lucios. That is out. He can only bump the ball, or boop the ball. His ultimate ability does not draw the ball towards him. It just makes him more powerful. So he can boop the ball a bit stronger, he can skate a little bit faster, and jump a little bit higher. So that'll be interesting. And from what I understand, the ultimate comes back pretty quickly. So that should make for an interesting thing. The other thing that they're doing with Lucio Ball is now there'll be a competitive side. So...
Oh, yeah. I read about this. Yeah.
No, go. 3-week competitive... What's that?
No, go for it. Sorry. I was just saying, like, I read this. I actually did a little research.
The competitive side will actually have... it'll be very similar to their regular competitive mode, but strictly directed towards Lucio Ball. So there'll be the competitive theme and then competitive Lucio Ball called Copa Lucio Ball. And it'll still reward gold points or whatever that'll go towards getting golden guns. But there's supposed to be an extra little special thing that's supposed to be a surprise once it releases. So I don't know what that is, but that's what Jeff Kaplan said in the update. He also pointed out that when the Summer Games event happened the first time, the special items in the loot boxes were not purchasable. You could only get them by getting them within loot boxes. They saw that as being a problem, so then changed that by the time the Halloween event came around. So this time around, you're absolutely able to get or to purchase, like with in-game coins, the skins. All the skins from the Summer Games are back, plus there are new ones. Jeff Kaplan said in the developer update very specifically that his two favorites are Junkrat and Mercies, but that's all we know who are getting legendary skins, new legendary skins. But I'm very excited about all of it. I can't wait to play it. I can't wait to compete in it. I'm going to be on it every single night. I'll probably be streaming it this upcoming Saturday on Half Empty Energy Tank. But yeah, that's very exciting. Very much something I want to happen. The other thing about Overwatch, because there really wasn't a ton. You may have heard that there's a PTR patch coming out that's like 4-point-something gigabytes.
God damn! Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Jesus.
So no one really knows why the PTR patch is that big, but the speculation as to why is because they're revamping a lot of the internal game not mechanics, but oh my god, what was it called?
Graphics?
Not graphics, like the oh my gosh, why am I drawing a fat blank? It's people think that they're revamping some core instruments within the game, not mechanics or play wise, like more to the extent of like the capabilities of the game, essentially. And they're going to test it out in the PTR. I don't know.
Yeah,
it was just there's a lot of, because nobody really knows. It's speculation at this point.
All right.
But the PTR patch is 4-point-something gigabytes.
I would hopefully Blizzard or somebody comes out and say like what exactly that is, because that's a pretty meaty patch. So I want to know. Yeah. The Twitch Prime loot boxes are going away. However, there are new Twitch Prime loot boxes on their way. So the golden ones that are currently available, they're going to be gone soon. Will they come back? No, I don't know. But they're absolutely going to be coming out with new loot boxes for Twitch Prime members. So we'll see what those have. We'll see if those are like... people have been talking about like older skins coming back in those boxes, so that's cool. And what was the other thing? Oh, there is an SR bug and a competitive bug. So I'll quickly read this like information that somebody posted about like what he's reading within the Battle.net forums. He says, myself and a large handful of people are on the official forums have been experiencing an issue which causes you to lose SR and receive a competitive suspension for simply joining queue. The chat, wow. Yeah, the chat gives a failed to connect to server error while queuing for a competitive game and kicks you out to the queue, causes you to lose SR and suspends you from 10 minutes or up to 2 hours. People attempted to connect again after the suspension, only to be met with an even greater SR loss and longer ban. So this is absolutely a problem, and I don't know if Blizzard has responded to this yet. It's definitely an issue. It doesn't seem to be happening on console. This seems to be a PC only issue. But yeah, if this is happening to you, definitely go to the forums, go to Twitter, let them know this is happening. Let them know that you have not left games to deserve this. It has not been an internet connection issue, because you're able to join, maybe let's say quick play or something to that effect. It's definitely like a problem, a bug. Again,
I hope this gets some attention and it gets fixed, because that is definitely a problem that could hurt them in the long run, hurt the company in the long run.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking at the forum again, the biggest forum on here, and I'm still not seeing any confirmation or like anybody in there from Blizzard saying anything. So yeah, it's like, definitely try to bring some more light to it, because that's definitely a problem.
Yep, seems like it. Yeah. And
yeah, that's it for your Overwatch Minute. Oh, I do want to say real quick, a few weeks ago I kind of mentioned it, but I've actually been playing a lot more. That whole thing, the reduction in loot box duplicates.
Oh yeah,
duplicates. Oh my god, it's so good. Every loot box I've had has not had one duplicate.
Good.
And I've opened at least 20 at this point.
Nice. Actually, man, it's been quite a long time since I played Overwatch, but that's good to hear. That's very good to hear.
Yeah, it's very nice. Like, love it very much. So, yeah. So that's your Overwatch Minute.
All right, there you go, guys. That's been your Overwatch Minute with Greg Dietz. Now, back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Well, I tell you didn't even fade out. You just stopped it. You're like, done. And
I mean, I could have did it slowly, but you know, I don't know. I probably could have. I have a mixer right here, so I could.
I know.
I could have turned the dial like slowly and then made it much more professional. I guess, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yes, we are. All right. So actually, let me get there real quick. Our next topic on the list, next to us. So this was brought up because I was searching through the internets and kind of came across this video. This is by Warpaby, a YouTuber, and basically the video, and I'll actually put a link in the chat as well. But it basically goes into details as far as like why he thinks that there's going to be another video game crash. For those who may not know about the game industry and its previous ordeal, back in the 80s, the game industry went through what was many deemed a crash. And
I mean, it not only, like, it was 100% a crash, just because video games straight up were like gone for a few years after it happened.
Yeah. It was, to many people back then, it was like a fad. It wasn't, it wasn't something that they would think it would stay around for a long time. And the reason for the crash is because just a lot of games that were being put out were not good. Especially, a big contributor to that was the E.T. game. That
it wasn't just that they weren't good; it's that games back then were expensive. I mean, if you use inflation measurements on how much they cost then for what they would cost now, it was like $80 to $90 per game.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like, they weren't that fun. Atari games were fun when the graphics were, very simple, but they started trying to be more complex and things just looked like poopy. Plus, they were being pumped out so fast that even if they didn't look bad, they still controlled very poorly, or were very confusing. Like, it's argued that E.T. is the reason for the crash. Well, it's not the reason.
I would say I would say it was kind of put in over the top. Like, that was the tipping point.
Kind of yes and kind of no. So there's a few documentaries that I've watched where people have kind of run down the history of what happened and how it happened, and then I've talked to people on both sides of that fence, and there are people that actually consider E.T. to be one of the better Atari games. The problem with E.T., though, was that it was very confusing on how to play. There was no direct instructions, like even the manual was confusing, so that's where that was a problem. But it was also built by one guy who was being pressured to make the game as fast as possible. So, like, he made that game in a month, 2 months, something like that.
Jesus. Damn.
Yeah. And so that was a huge problem with the industry at the time. It was just industries or publishers saw that more was better. Pumping out as much as they could was a good idea, and they oversaturated the market. People just had they didn't have, like, they were basically the publishers were spending more money and not seeing that return because people didn't want to spend that much. And people got burnt out and just stopped buying Atari games as a whole. You know, people argue like, well, there was Magnavox and Coleco at the time. And it's like, yeah, they were around, but they couldn't hold the candle to what Atari was doing when Atari was doing their best.
Yeah.
So that's why those systems and companies failed. And by the time the crash happened, Atari or Coleco and Magnavox had dropped out. They were done. So.
Yeah. Definitely. Like at the time, Atari was king. Only to be followed up by arcades, but at the time, like Atari was the console at the in the 80s as far as like what to get, and you know, it had awesome games on it. But yeah, like at the time, like it was just at some point there were so many games that you know people couldn't afford it, and they kind of moved on. Like there were not a lot of games that were made afterwards. And the only thing that kind of saved the game industry was Nintendo with the NES and kind of resparked that fuel.
Not really, and I'll explain why. So back when Atari had come out, it was put into the electronics section, so people saw that as a computer. They didn't see it as like this toy for kids. That's like truthfully, they didn't see it as a toy, straight up. Adults would buy it and be like, "Man, this is like the next age." Blah blah. Like it was not considered necessarily a toy. Now that being said, that's where Nintendo succeeded. So in Japan, it's an entirely different story. But here in America, because the Atari had failed and they were trying to go through, they were going through another publisher. Nintendo was straight up going to go to somebody else.
Oh, yeah. It was Philips. Because there
Philips,
were...
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to go through Philips, and that deal went south. It went sour real quick. So Nintendo of America was like, well, we'll just do it ourselves. I'm sorry, Nintendo decided to do it themselves and built Nintendo of America. Nintendo of America had this option. We need to sell this product, but we need to make it marketable to Americans. So that's why the Famicom got an entire redesign, and it looked like a VHS. People knew what a VHS looked like, and it was comfortable. That's why... What's that?
I was saying, not to mention that they also packed it in with Rob, the robot, the toy robot as well.
That goes into the next piece, that they decided to put it in the boys' toy section instead of the electronics section. It was the original Nintendo was never in electronics; it was straight up in the toy section.
Okay.
Yeah, they had an option. You know, like, do we put it in electronics or do we put it in toys? And then once they had decided to make it a toy, which made it a lot more marketable to kids, which were who they kind of decided was going to be their target market, they had to make a choice. Do we put it in the girls section or the boys section? And they went with boys. That's why you've seen over the years so many advertisements directed at boys with video games. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But but the fact that Nintendo was able to do that and market it in a different fashion, it didn't seem like to the masses at the time that it was different, that it wasn't really anything different than what Atari was doing. Just obviously slightly better visuals and graphics, but and I say slightly because going from 4 bytes to 8 really doesn't make, like, it makes a difference, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
But there are people, as Anthony has pointed out, that are trying to say that we are headed towards another video game crash.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is, like, I've heard it from various people within the game industry that are also in the media, and a part of me kind of agrees, especially right now, only for the fact that right now there are so many games that come out every year that you can't play them all. I mean, for a good reason. But you're getting games from everybody, from indie developers. Obviously, you said you have AAA developers are still out there making their big budget games, but you're getting games from like other publishers as well that you haven't heard of. Some of these games being kickstarted on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So there are just multiple platforms you can buy games from, or get them for free, through other ways. So I can understand the argument that we may be going to another crash, but I don't think we're at that point yet.
Here's why we won't be at a crash. There are too many avenues in which to get games. That's why there'll be no crash. There are too many industries. Not industries, but there are too many big companies, big groups that won't allow a crash to happen. I'll give you a perfect example of how a crash could happen, how a crash did happen, and how a crash might happen. So, could happen is with Activision. They are going down the exact same path that they went down back when the Atari was around, and they're one of the big culprits of why the crash originally happened. And their entire thing could completely collapse around them because they keep pumping out garbage games. They keep pumping out things that people are just kind of getting tired of. So it could absolutely happen to them, but not anybody else.
Agreed.
Here's where a crash did happen. THQ.
Yes.
So THQ went down because of the same oversaturation and people getting tired of what they were doing. There were a few titles that they did make that were really good and really original, like the Darksider games, but their other titles were not in that category, and they would belly up because of it. Yeah. And everyone that worked for them lost their jobs.
Yeah, and just kind of follow up on that, like, they were, back then, there were the B-level tier companies that would make games that were, they're not, like, bad, but they weren't, like, AAA status. They were in the middle. And there was at a time where, like, in the PS2, Xbox original era, and I want to say, what was at the time for Nintendo? Oh, GameCube. Like, you would get, like, B-level type games, same way like a B-movie, per se. But, you know, as, you know, in this generation, it's very hard to have this type of games nowadays. You need to, right in this generation, like, you need to make a good amount of money to make that earnings come back, or some other ways to garner money from your game. So they went down, and then they were raised from the dead from another company called Nordic Games, which they renamed themselves THQ Nordic Games. But yeah, THQ was definitely an example. I would say that I was gonna say that's an example of something that I think is what you're gonna see more of. Yeah.
Is individual companies crashing, not the industry as a whole. It's too powerful as a whole to crash anytime soon.
Yeah. The only I was gonna just kind of add on to that. What I will say is, like, just kind of going to the point that you will see more companies that will crash that are kind of mid to the bigger size. And you probably won't hear it, but you like a lot of smaller studios will probably also close down because of, like, the market, and, you know, as far as, like, you know, how much they have to sell to make that money back. Because the game, sorry, go ahead.
I think the AAA studios are going to crash. I think that'll eventually happen within our lifetime.
I think so too. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very large possibility, and the writing's on the wall on that one. I think that the reason that that's the case is simply because they just keep pumping out stuff that people aren't caring about anymore.
Yeah.
The Call of Duty franchise has been slowly losing traction. Sure, it still sells like ridiculous numbers when they do come out with things, but it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't think people are getting tired of shooters per se. I think they're just getting tired of the same shooters.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Overwatch. Overwatch is a shooter, but it's a different type of shooter. People are calling it a hero shooter. And there's a reason that Friday the 13th and PUBG are getting such huge praise. They're getting praise because they're not the same type of shooter.
Yes.
And I think that is important to note.
Yeah, that's a big thing to note too. I think that with games nowadays, and obviously, it's always good to say, like, original IPs are the things that are most important to the game industry, which they are, always bringing new ideas. But it's kind of the game industry, when it comes to sequels, it's kind of suffering, as just the same as entertainment, if you think about it. Like,
the one thing I was going to say, that an industry or a company that almost crashed because of pumping out too much at one time, and they've retracted. They've stopped doing it. They understand the mistakes they made, and they're retracting.
Well,
Ubisoft.
Okay, I would say yeah. It definitely, Ubisoft is an example. They actually took a year off of making Assassin's Creed, brought that game back to this year, showed it off at E3. Lukewarm reception for the game so far, at least from my end. But
I think that a lot of that has to do with, you know, people are becoming more and more disenfranchised with franchised games.
Yes. Yes.
They're becoming more and more disenfranchised with the developer coming out and saying, here's what we want the game to do. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've been seeing a lot of developers, a lot of companies come out and grandiose their game when in reality they shouldn't be doing that. When you oversell something and the you know, the market gets it, sure, you'll make a lot of money on that one, but the next time, like, Watch Dogs is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
Watch Dogs, they oversold the crap out of Watch Dogs. They upsold the living crap out of that game, and then it did not meet expectations. People were very upset about it.
Yeah.
So when the sequel came out, people didn't care, and that's why Watch Dogs 2 did not do very well at all.
It goes to the same.
Which is,
I was going to say it's going to follow up. Like it goes the same. Of another example was Dishonored 2. There was a lot of people who were, you know, fans of the game would, loved it, but my kind of reception of everybody else in the game industry is just like, it's Dishonored 2. It's a game you can go play. Like there wasn't that excitement that people had for the original Dishonored, because when the original Dishonored came out, and this was back when I saw it Game Informer. I read that and heard people talking about like this is like Half-Life, and this is like the rebirth of Half-Life, like in another game, and some other game combined, like BioShock at the same time. I was like, oh shit! So I had to check it out. And like when it came out this year, it just did not resonate with people, for whatever reason. And maybe it is really because they're tired of their franchise already, or maybe it's the fact that like sequels don't tend to do well, especially nowadays in the game industry. Not all, but some.
It's like I said, there's. I mean, I'll also explain why things have changed, but on more of a social idea. So the reason that PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3 were successful, and Xbox and Xbox 360 were successful, or in the way that they were successful, was because games took a little bit more time to come out, and when they came out, that was it. There was no, like, if there was DLC, it took a while for the DLC to come out, and it was a one-time thing, and everything wasn't online as it is now. But also, let's get away from video games and talk about society. So there are the people who grew up in the 80s and 90s, who grew up in such a nice time to be a kid that when they became adults, and then unfortunately I have to bring this up, but 9/11 happened, the world took a much darker turn. Things became a lot more grim and a lot more serious for a lot of young adults, myself included. I had turned 21 in 2004. So, 2004. Turned 21 in 2004. And even at that time, I got one of my first jobs after turning 21 was at AMPM, and I had a knife pulled on me for some beer. Like, a lot of young adults had to deal with this very, very harsh, dark world that had reared its ugly head. And the best way for a lot of these young adults, millennials, if you will, to kind of handle the world at the same time was to latch on to nostalgia. And I'm regurgitating information at this point, by the way, guys. This is coming from a psychiatrist who's been studying trends in America with people. So that's why you're seeing a lot of people get very excited about resurgences of things, but then also getting mad about them very easily and very quickly. It was just a psychological thing. It turned into that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just a coping mechanism, if you will.
Yeah.
But here's where the bad part comes in. It's really hard to let go of that mentality. It's really hard to let go of that kind of nostalgia. So when a lot of people around our age, I'd say between 28 and 35, go to the extent of like being excited for something and not having their expectations met to feel like that young person again. They immediately get upset. A perfect example of something that I saw recently that I kind of went, that's very interesting, is, do you remember an older movie called Get Shorty?
I vaguely remember that name, but I do not know what it was.
So Get Shorty is a fantastically hilarious, like, dark comedy kind of movie. And it came out, I want to say in the 90s, right? And it's fairly popular. It's fairly famous. But it is, it recently got a, 95. Okay, I want to double check that. It recently got a TV show, but like streaming service TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard anyone complain about it not being like the original online at all?
I mean, I haven't really seen any talk about it, honestly, on Twitter or social media. So I haven't really seen much of anything on my end. But what about on your end?
No, I haven't, and here's why. Same for Fargo, by the way. Just same for Fargo.
Okay.
And here's why. Here's why I haven't. You won't see any vitriol towards the remakes of those, because the generation that is complaining about it now, complaining about remakes, complaining about those things, did not grow up with those. Those aren't their things. So you're not going to hear anything about it. Whereas the people in a certain age range who enjoyed, like, wait for DuckTales to come out, man, because holy crap.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big one.
Yeah, that will be.
So the reason I talk about it in terms of video games is because you're going to see a lot of that as well. You're going to see a lot of people complain that video games aren't like they were back then. A game would come out every 3 years, you'd play it, and then that was it, and then you'd get that experience, and then 3 years later you get a sequel, or you just get a new game. You're going to hear a lot of people say that the 80s and 90s were full of renovation and new ideas and new things and new IPs, and it wasn't. It wasn't. It really wasn't, and there's a reason why. There's no more original ideas. They don't exist. You can change ideas and make them seem new. But even one of my most favorite things in the world, Steven Universe, is not entirely original.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, there really isn't any original ideas left to be said. I mean, you can have a certain idea and like change some things about it, tweak it a bit, and it's brand new. But no, realistically, thinking about it, like there isn't no real change or no like original content.
There really isn't, and so my argument always when people kind of have such a strong distaste towards remakes, I kind of like, or sequels for that matter, I kind of go, it's that's always been a thing. That'll always be a thing. You're gonna get like a pseudo original idea, every once in a while. Like it was like that. Like, sure, people can say all these great movies came out in the 80s. Look at every single year there was a new one. Well, that's with every single year, regardless.
Yeah.
Every single year in the 90s there was a great film or a great series of films. Like I say, series in like 3 or 4. Every single year from 80 to 2017.
Yeah.
And that goes for games too. Sorry, that goes for. I know it's a gaming podcast, but that goes for games too.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely. You're definitely right when it comes to like there isn't that many original ideas left, or just to kind of go off of like idea and tweak it a little bit, and it's brand new. Much the same case in the game industry. You have games that are virtually the same thing, just like things here are different. Even the wording of some game reviews doesn't really context like what is happening in the game in terms of like how they would describe it, because you hear often people who are in the game industry as press, like, to describe a new game they have like 3-4 different references from other games to describe that game, and it's even Overwatch got a lot of flack for quote unquote not being original. So Yeah.
You're just going to see it more often. You're going to see it all the time because that particular generation is the ones who are going to make things popular. They're the generation that are going to make things like, there's a certain age range where things stop mattering to them, and it's like after 35 or something like that, which I'm slowly getting to.
That's all right. Yeah.
I will be 35 next year, so that's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
But that being said, I remember when I was in my 20s, and I remember being very hateful towards things that weren't like the original. And instead of saying to myself, Anthony, like, why? Instead of saying, like, why can't they just make what I want them to make? I started going, why am I acting like this? Why am I saying this out loud? Why do I care enough that it has to be like that? Then I started looking at different types of art, started listening to other people talk about types of art. And it dawned on me that what I was doing was latching onto something that I felt like I had lost. And that was my childhood. I felt like it was gone because of the world around me, because of how growing up is a very harsh bitch. And a lot of people find coping mechanisms. And that was our generation's coping mechanism, was just latching onto the past and going, man, like that's why South Park made a whole thing on member berries,
yeah.
That's why that joke resonates so well, is because that's kind of the world we live in with media. So I know that the topic was about the crash. And the reason I talk about all this, the reason I mention it, is our generation will not allow the crash to happen.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and this is kind of...
I was going to bring it back around, guys, I promise.
I was going to say, and again, it's kind of reiterate, like, there are just too many avenues for games to come out that people would want to play. And I think that Greg and I are in the same mindset that the only thing will crash in the game industry, in my opinion, and I think it will happen at one point, are these big AAA studios. Because like the one thing that when they make their games, obviously when they want to make, they want them to make them the best they can, and they always strive to, but the cost of doing it is extremely high. It is almost like making a movie high, and
it's absurdly high.
And if they don't make the numbers enough back, if they fail to meet those numbers for the sales wise, they either go under or they downsize tremendously to make a much smaller game. That's why you have games that are made from these other smaller developers, smaller indies that are getting, not tons of money, but they're having much better success, much more manageable numbers than you have with AAA studios. And I think that
something that's very fascinating nowadays too, you have to keep this in mind when it comes to will the game industry crash, is that back when things were a little bit less internet-y, as best I'm going to put it, there wasn't as many people talking about whatever on the internet. So when when a company would decide whether or not to give something a sequel, it was purely based on, did it make a lot of money and do our stockholders care? Nowadays, it's did it make a lot of money? Do our stockholders care? And what are the fans saying on Twitter?
Yeah.
And people in our age group are definitely within that wheelhouse of there is a sense of influence that we do carry. I've seen it happen more times than I care to count. I mean, the perfect example is Mass Effect 3. Even though I love that game to death and argue with people about it all the time, they did have influence to get them to release a thing that furthered the ending to an extent.
Yeah.
Even though in that category, I knew everything that happened.
Yeah.
This isn't about Mass Effect 3, Greg. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a huge factor into it as well. And I think that's why that's a perfect example with Ubisoft, like pulling back and understanding that like this is a problem. Sure, their stockholders may say, no Assassin's Creed every year, this game makes money. But the fans are like, please stop, it's becoming bad. Like, games are trash.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a thing. And I think I really want Activision to get that note. I really want EA to get that note.
Agreed.
But they won't. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that EA and Activision won't. They'll still pump out as many games as possible because as the market, the reason a lot of other people say that the market is going to crash is because there's an oversaturation of games. People always complain, I don't have enough money for games. For example, I want Fortnite, Mega Man Collection Legacy 2, Sonic Mania, and Destiny 2. All 4 of those come out within a month of each other. I don't have enough money for any of them.
Yeah, it's insane. You can't at this point. It's kind of pick and choose what games you want, and when you have the money, buy them if you can. It's just, again, there's so many games that come out every year now. It's hard to cover all of them or to talk about all of them. I know that the podcast I listen to, Giant Bomb, Game Over Gregory, or Kind of Funny, I should say, and other podcasts, like, they obviously they're gonna trend as far as like what the game industry is gonna say or what other critics gonna say what games to check out. But there's so many in a given year, like you have to pick and choose which ones you want to play and which ones you want to buy. And it's just too many. It's far too many. You can't do them all.
Right, and that's another big problem right there. And I think that's why a lot of people, like that video you sent me, of the guy, like of people saying that there's going to be a crash, is simply because there's too many games and not enough people buying these too many games. There aren't enough people making enough money to go throughout a month and say, like, I could spend $60 on 3 different games. That doesn't happen. People can barely afford one $60 game every 3 months.
Yeah. And
so
yeah, and this is to add on to that, most of the people that bought those games more than likely have not beaten the entire game. Unless it depends on the game, but like obviously some people who buy these games don't even finish it.
Well, this is also, Anthony, why I was a defender of like Nintendo's opening lineup for the Switch. People kept saying like, "Oh, the lineup's kind of weak," and I was like, "It may seem weak, but at the realistic extent, you're going to be spending $300 on a system plus $60 on a game, and you're going to be spending hours upon hours upon hours on that one game." And maybe most of the people playing that game aren't going to have that much time to beat it and play it. Like maybe somebody who's unemployed or a child. And even parents nowadays of children are forcing their kids to play less games because they want them to get exercise or something like that. Like it's an hour a night. So having just one game every 3 months really doesn't sound like that bad of an idea. I had to take a survey a while back that was like, how many games do you buy a year? And I think my response was like, what kind of game? Because if it's like, if it's an indie game that costs less than $15, then the number's probably about 12. But if you're talking about AAA $60 titles, 1 a year. Yeah. Maybe two.
Yeah. So, before we close this topic, I'd say final thoughts on this is the fact that, I think everything we've said so far in this topic is just, no, there won't be a crash. Companies that are big will fall eventually if they don't fix their ideology when it comes to gaming or games and putting them out there over and over again. That and that, again, there's too many avenues for people to sell games in every aspect. So, one big company falls, like at least 10 more rise up in the mid to the smaller companies that will rise.
The only thing I'd like to say to people, Anthony, in general, or if anybody listening to this podcast, if there's anyone that actually listens to this and takes any advice that we ever give, be a smarter consumer. That's all I ask. When you go and you look up what you want to play, do a little bit of research. Talk to some other people who've played it. Maybe listen to one or two reviewers that follow the same idea that you do. Don't be afraid to listen to a reviewer and go, maybe this game isn't for me. And then don't buy it. It's totally acceptable to not play a game. It's like, I think a lot of people have that mindset of, well, I have to play it. Like, if I don't play it, I'm missing out. You're not missing out. Just because I didn't see half the movies that came out in the last few years doesn't necessarily mean I'm missing out. And those are films. Those are much easier digestible than a full game. So take your time, take it easy. Just remember that games are meant to be fun. They're not meant to be stressful. They're not meant to feel like anything other than a stress relief. And when you treat them other than that, they become worse than that, and that becomes where the problem lies. So.
Yes, unless there are games that will scare the crap out of you, or gives you stress in fighting games, or any other game like that.
Well, I mean, even in that regard, sometimes people play games on the hardest difficulty and feel stress in that regard, but it's still a stress relief from the regular life.
That's true. That's true. I mean, like, I point to Dark Souls, and people love to play that game, and it's hard as hell. But
Right.
yeah, all right. Well, that's our show, guys. Again, not many things to really talk about this week, but hey, we managed to throw in a little old school mission to our podcast with topics that we used to tend to do every once in a while. But with that being said, Greg, where can I find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Chub Rock Geek. I don't post a whole lot on my Facebook. I do tweet fairly often, and the occasional picture on Instagram. So what I would recommend is, if you follow the Twitter, but I need to get better about posting on my fan page, just because I'm not doing that often enough. But if you do want to hear my opinions more in depth while I'm playing a game, you can definitely come to Mission Start Podcast. Or sorry, wow, my brain just stopped there.
Man,
Twitch.tv/halfempty-tank. I stream every Saturday night there, unless I have something going on in my life, which I don't stream that Saturday. But if variety streams and variety streamers interest you, there's a whole team of us over there. We stream every single night, I should say. It is East Coast time, so it's 8 to 12 East Coast, which is 5 to 9 our time. That's all that is. I am going to be tomorrow. Pardon me. Tomorrow I'm going to be working on 3 different reviews. The first one is for Hey Pikmin. The second one is for I don't remember. Did I do a review for Mighty Gunvolt Burst?
I don't think you did.
Because I don't think I did either, but I meant to. So I will do a full review from Mighty Gunvolt Burst, and with a little caveat to the DLC, which is Ikaro from Galgun.
Oh, that game, yeah, I remember that.
And I did do a review on Master Blaster Zero, or Blaster Master Zero. However, there have been 4 DLC characters that have come out: Gunvolt, Ikaro, Shovel Knight, and Shantae. So I've played all 4 of them, and I will do a review where I talk about each of them. So that's a total of 3 reviews.
Nice. Awesome. Good stuff.
I'm going to start working on that tomorrow night.
Cool. Awesome. Little short story about Galgun. Long ago, when I used to intern for OneUp.com, rest in peace, I'm not sure if it's actually up on the internet. I mean, it might be, but they were doing a live stream of the game. And me and one Tina Sanchez actually were sat down, and I played it, or we played it, and it was just like, oh, what is this game? This game is I have no idea how to feel about this game at the time, and I still don't today, other than the fact that it's a very perfect game. Japan. Anyways.
I did watch Game Grumps play it because
oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Matt Papa, who is a friend of Half Empties, by the way. I've spoken to him a couple times now because of that reason, primarily at MacFest. But he apparently gave a copy to Egoraptor, and watching them play it, it's a on-rail shooter that you can play with a controller. I mean, you can play with a gun too, but play with a controller primarily. And Oh my god, my brain just pooped on me.
I'm gonna clip
but
that
the
later
idea,
on.
what me having my brain poops?
Yeah, that was actually. I'll use it for later times. I don't know. That was
Anyway,
just,
the idea is Ikaro, the angel, like the Cupid angel, if you will. She powers up her gun too heavily, shoots the wrong guy, and if he doesn't find the love of his life within, I think, 24 hours or something like that, he will die.
Yeah.
However, but because he was shot with that giant love dart, now every girl in his vicinity has lust after him. So he has to shoot them with pheromones, make them relax.
Yeah, definitely.
Relax.
Definitely.
So it is kind of pervy, but not like the worst kind of pervy.
Oh yeah, there's been much worse games, but like yeah, that game is. It was fun to watch other people play it, but at the time when I was playing it at 1UP, I was like, I have no idea how I feel about this. I'm on stream for the first time. What's going on? I gotta look it up. I'm pretty sure like there's a video of me like playing that game at some point. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at DefectiveNaruto. You can follow the work that we do at MissionStartPodcast.com. Let me get this real quick. All right. So, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoy watching it or listening to it in any other way, hit that follow button on this Twitch channel. Or if you want sub to us, that's awesome too. But this podcast usually goes live on our website on Tuesdays and on iTunes and Stitcher around noon-ish. Yeah, check it out then, and you can check it out on the YouTube as well later in the week. If you enjoy us talking about convention talk, Comic-Con, upcoming Crunchyroll Expo and other conventions like that, check out the Conover. It's a podcast talking about conventions and our thoughts of what went wrong, what went bad, what went good. And it's also on iTunes and Stitcher as well. It's not a weekly series, so I'm trying to make it to be. But it definitely is. Check it out. It is on iTunes and Stitcher as well as in the podcast section of our website. Last but not least, the Rolling 20s have been pretty busy as of late. They just put up their new episode this past weekend of their time at Comic-Con, the San Diego Comic-Con, I should point out. It is on iTunes, Stitcher, and as well in our podcast section of our website. Yeah, check it out. It's hosted by Jeremy Wilson of the Rolling 20s. They also have a Twitter, which is at the Rolling 20s. And that's going to do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It's going to do it for us. And yeah, and nothing else to say, then we'll see you guys next time.